The parmesan soufflé was perfect when my stepmother walked into my restaurant, waving a health inspection report like a victory flag. In 15 years of cooking, I'd never made a better soufflé. It was a work of art, floating on its plate like a golden cloud. I watched Isabella's stilettos click across my immaculate floor as I gently positioned micro-herbs on top of my masterpiece. Health code violations, she announced loudly enough for the remaining lunch customers to hear. How embarrassing for you, Emma. Your father would be devastated to see his restaurant like this. I carefully placed the soufflé on the pass. Table 7, Jean, I said to my server, then turned to face the woman who'd spent the last year trying to destroy everything I'd built. What can I help you with, Isabella? We're preparing for dinner service. She slapped the health inspection report on my pristine counter, her red lips curved in a triumphant smile. Oh, I doubt you'll need to worry about dinner service. Not after this gets posted on every review site in Chicago. She tapped one manicured nail against the paper. Improper food storage, inadequate hand-washing facilities, evidence of pest infestation. It's quite the list. I studied her designer outfit, Channel, this time probably bought with my father's money, and thought about the USB drive hidden in my office safe upstairs. That's thoughtful of you, I said mildly, getting the word out like that. My calm reaction clearly threw her. Isabella had expected tears, panic, maybe even begging. Instead, she got professional courtesy and a small smile as I continued plating dishes for the few remaining lunch customers. You don't seem to understand the severity of the situation, she snapped, leaning across my counter. This is it, Emma, the end of your little fine dining experiment. Just like I promised would happen if you didn't sell me your shares. Ah, there it was, the real reason for her vindictive campaign against Maison. 6 months ago, my father had passed away, leaving me full ownership of the restaurant he founded 30 years ago. Isabella, his wife of barely 4 years, had been convinced the restaurant should be hers. After all, she'd been the one managing the books for the past 3 years, ever since Dad's health had started failing. What Isabella didn't know was that I'd seen this coming long before Dad died. I'd watched her manipulate him, isolate him from family and friends, position herself to take control of his legacy. But Dad had been smarter than she'd realized. He'd seen through her act in his final months, though he kept that knowledge to himself. Your father was worried about you, she continued, examining her perfect nails. He told me you weren't ready for the responsibility of running a Michelin-starred restaurant. That's why he made me executor of his estate. I bit back a laugh. If she only knew about the conversations Dad and I had in the hospital, about the plans we'd put in motion together. I appreciate your concern, I said, turning to check on my next soufflé. Will you be staying for lunch? The black truffle version is particularly good today. You're not listening, she snapped, her composed facade cracking slightly. This report is real. The violations are documented. You're done. I looked up from my careful work. Oh, I'm listening, Isabella. I just think you might be missing something important. What's that supposed to mean? It means that sometimes people see what they want to see. They don't look deeper, don't question why things fall into place so conveniently. She straightened up, smoothing her designer blazer. Are you suggesting something improper about the health inspection? Because I assure you it was completely legitimate. Of course it was, I agreed. Just like the last 3 anonymous complaints about food safety. Just like the sudden cancellations of our private dining contracts. Just like the mysterious negative reviews that all seem to use the same phrasing. A flush crept up her neck, but she maintained her superior smile. Sounds like you're just not very good at running a restaurant. I set my whisk down carefully. You know what's interesting about pattern recognition, Isabella? Once you start looking for certain behaviors, they become very easy to document, very easy to track. What are you babbling about? Nothing important, I said, returning to my prep work. Just thinking out loud. Will there be anything else? As I said, we're preparing for dinner service. She stood there for a moment longer, clearly thrown by my lack of distress. Finally, with a dismissive wave, she turned to leave. Enjoy your last few days in business, Emma. Maybe next time you'll learn to respect your elders. As the door closed behind her, my sous chef, Sophie, emerged from the kitchen. She bought it? I nodded, pulling out my phone to send a quick text. It's done. She took the bait. Sophie grinned, retrieving a small device from under the counter, the camera that had recorded every second of Isabella's visit. Perfect timing too, right after we finished installing the new equipment. I glanced around my restaurant, at the state-of-the-art kitchen visible through the open design, the immaculate dining room, the gleaming surfaces that had passed every legitimate health inspection with flying colors. Isabella thought she was so clever, arranging for a fraudulent inspection during our scheduled renovation week. She had no idea that every violation in that report was about to become evidence in a much larger investigation. My phone buzzed with a response from Rachel, my lawyer. Report received. Meeting in 1 hour with the investigators. I turned to Sophie, who'd been more than just a chef through all of this. She'd been my partner in an elaborate sting operation. Ready for phase 2. She nodded, already heading back to the kitchen. Been ready for months. Time to show her what real restaurant management looks like. Isabella thought she'd finally won, thought she found a way to force me out of the restaurant she coveted. She had no idea that every move she'd made had been anticipated, documented, and woven into a case that would make her health inspection scheme look like a minor footnote. Because while she'd been focused on destroying my restaurant, I'd been quietly building something much bigger, something that would not only protect my business but expose years of fraud that went far beyond a fake health report. Dad had taught me well. Sometimes you have to let your opponent think they're winning before you show them how thoroughly they've lost. 2 hours later, I sat in Rachel's downtown office, watching as she laid out documents across her conference table. District Attorney Michael Thompson and FBI Agent Lisa Chen sat across from us, reviewing the evidence we gathered over the past 6 months. The health inspection report was the final piece we needed, Rachel said, adding today's recording to the pile. Isabella didn't just arrange a fraudulent inspection. She actively spread false information about a licensed business with the intent to cause harm. That's just the beginning, Agent Chen added, pulling up files on her laptop. Once we started looking into her activities, we found a pattern going back years. The wine import business she started 3 years ago. It's been laundering money for her real operation. I nodded, remembering how Dad had first become suspicious. He'd noticed discrepancies in the wine inventory. Expensive bottles were being sold for cash, but the stock never seemed to decrease significantly. Exactly, Michael said. Your father's notes were invaluable. He documented everything once he realized what was happening, but he knew confronting her directly would be dangerous. That's why he reached out to us. The truth was, Dad had done more than just reach out. In his final months working with the FBI, he'd helped set up an elaborate trap. One that Isabella had walked right into, her greed and vindictiveness making her blind to the signs. Show her the footage, Rachel suggested. Agent Chen turned her laptop around. On the screen, security camera feed showed Isabella's wine shop after hours, well-dressed customers entering through the back door, leaving with more than just bottles of wine. The cash transactions, the coded conversations, all of it carefully recorded. We've identified connections to 3 different smuggling operations, Agent Chen explained. The wine business was just a front. The real business was happening in the storage room. And the restaurant? I asked, though I already knew the answer. That's where it gets interesting, Rachel said, pulling out another file. Your father's will wasn't just about inheritance. By leaving you the restaurant, he ensured that Isabella couldn't move or hide her operation without raising suspicion. He knew she'd try to force you out instead. Which is exactly what she's been doing, Michael added. The false complaints, the sabotage contracts, and now this fraudulent health inspection. It's all part of a documented pattern of harassment. I thought about all the times Isabella had come into my restaurant over the past 6 months, making snide comments about my little cooking hobby and how I was wasting prime real estate. Every visit had been recorded, every threat documented. What about the health inspector? I asked, the one who wrote the report. Agent Chen smiled. Already in custody. He rolled over on Isabella immediately, gave us details about other businesses she's targeted. Turns out our stepmother has quite a reputation for making problems disappear for the right price and making problems appear for people who get in her way. And making problems appear for people who get in her way, I added, remembering all the small businesses that had mysteriously failed after crossing paths with Isabella. We're ready to move, Michael said, checking his watch. The warrants are signed. We'll hit the wine shop during her afternoon private tasting session. I glanced at my phone. Isabella had just posted another scathing review of my restaurant, complete with photos from the fraudulent inspection. Her timing couldn't have been better. What do you need from me? I asked. Just keep doing what you're doing, Rachel advised. Run your restaurant, maintain your standards. Let her think she's winning. And maybe, Agent Chen added with a slight smile, be ready with your phone camera at around 3:00 p.m. Something tells me it's going to be an interesting afternoon in the restaurant district. I returned to Mazan just as the lunch rush was ending. Sophie had everything running smoothly, our regular customers seemingly unaffected by Isabella's online smear campaign. How'd the meeting go? She asked as I tied on my apron. Everything's set, I replied. They're moving in at 3. She nodded, understanding the significance. The new security cameras are all working. We'll have a perfect view of the wine shop's front entrance. I checked my watch, 2 hours to go. Through the restaurant's front windows, I could see Isabella in her shop, arranging wine displays with her usual meticulous attention to detail. She had no idea that her carefully constructed facade was about to crumble. At exactly 2:45 p.m., 3 expensive cars pulled up outside the wine shop. Right on schedule, Isabella's special customers arriving for their private tasting session. I watched as they were ushered inside, the closed for private event sign appearing in the window. Sophie and I busied ourselves with prep work, though both of us kept glancing at the clock. At 2:55, unmarked vehicles began quietly positioning themselves around the block. At 2:59, I received a text from Agent Chen, showtime. The raid was both swift and methodical. FBI agents emerged from seemingly nowhere, converging on the wine shop from all directions. Through our security cameras, we watched as Isabella's carefully maintained composure shattered. She tried to run, of course, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail about the building's layout. Something I'd learned from studying Dad's old blueprints. The back exit she thought was her escape route had been sealed off during a renovation years ago. The door she kept unlocked led to a storage room. The look on her face as they led her out in handcuffs was almost worth everything she put us through. Almost. Emma, she shrieked, spotting me standing in my restaurant doorway. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Isabella, I replied calmly, my phone recording everything. I just ran my restaurant. You're the one who decided to run something else. Her face contorted with rage. Your father would be ashamed of you. After everything I did for this family. Everything you did. I cut her off. You mean like isolating him from his friends? Manipulating his business decisions? Using his wine cellar as a front for your smuggling operation? She went pale. You can't prove any of that. Actually, Agent Chen said, appearing beside her, we can prove all of it. Your husband was very thorough with his documentation before he died. Isabella's carefully maintained facade crumbled completely. Robert, he knew. He knew everything, I said quietly. He just wanted to make sure you couldn't hurt anyone else once he was gone. As they led her to the waiting vehicles, local news crews began arriving, tipped off by an anonymous source about a major smuggling bust in the upscale restaurant district. Isabella's attempt to destroy my restaurant's reputation was about to backfire spectacularly. The aftermath of Isabella's arrest unfolded like a carefully choreographed performance. By evening, every major news outlet in the city was running the story. Upscale wine shop owner arrested in smuggling sting. The health inspection report she'd been so proud of was now just another piece of evidence showing her pattern of harassment and fraud. But the real revelations were just beginning. The day after the raid, I received a call from Agent Chen. You need to come down to the office. There's something you should see. In the FBI's evidence room, boxes of documents and electronic records from Isabella's wine shop told a story far darker than even we had suspected. The smuggling operation was just the tip of the iceberg. We found evidence linking her to at least 6 failed businesses in the area, Agent Chen explained, spreading photographs across the table. All competitors to her wine shop, all forced out through similar methods. Fraudulent inspections, sabotage contracts, staged health code violations. Just like what she tried to do to you. Exactly, she pulled out a file marked Robert Chen. Personal. Your father wasn't just documenting her current activities. He found evidence of similar operations going back 15 years, across 3 different states. I sat down heavily, the full weight of what Dad had uncovered hitting me. She's done this before. Multiple times, Rachel confirmed, joining us with more files. She'd marry successful restaurateurs or wine merchants, isolate them from family and friends, then use their resources and connections to expand her operation. When they became suspicious or threatened to expose her, She trailed off, but I understood the implication. Dad's illness, I said slowly. It wasn't natural, was it? Agent Chang shook her head slowly. We're having his medical records reviewed. The symptoms he experienced in his final months are consistent with long-term poisoning. The room seemed to spin. I'd suspected Isabella was dangerous, but this was beyond anything we'd imagined. We found this in her private safe, Rachel said gently, sliding a small notebook across the table. Your father's handwriting. He documented everything. Every suspicious transaction, every unexplained illness, every strange coincidence. He knew what was happening to him, but he needed to make sure she couldn't hurt anyone else. I opened the notebook with trembling hands, recognizing Dad's precise script. If you're reading this, Emma, it means everything went according to plan. Isabella thinks she's smarter than everyone else. That's her weakness. She never considered that her target might be playing her instead. The restaurant, the wine cellar, the inheritance, it was all part of the trap. I knew she couldn't resist trying to take it from you, knew she'd use the same methods she's used before. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything while I was alive. It would have put you in danger, but I taught you what you needed to know: patience, observation, the importance of keeping perfect records. Take care of the restaurant. It's more than just a business. It's proof that good things can grow in places where bad things once flourished. Love, Dad. In the days that followed, Isabella's empire crumbled completely. The investigation uncovered connections to organized crime, smuggling operations across multiple states, and evidence linking her to the suspicious deaths of 2 previous husbands. The wine shop's inventory was seized, the expensive wines revealed as counterfeits used to justify inflated cash transactions. Even her designer lifestyle was fake. The expensive cars were leased, the jewelry was cubic zirconia. The high society connections were all similarly compromised people involved in her schemes. Meanwhile, Mazam thrived. The publicity from Isabella's arrest brought curious customers who stayed for the food and atmosphere. Sophie's innovative menu and our impeccable service standards earned us legitimate recognition, including a second Michelin star. 6 months later, 1 year after Isabella's arrest, I received a letter from the Federal Correctional Facility. Inside was a single sheet of paper with Isabella's elegant handwriting. You were more like your father than I realized. You both saw the long game. I could only see the next move. The prosecutors are offering me a deal in exchange for information about my past operations. Before I tell them everything, I wanted you to know, Robert was different. He saw through me in a way no one else had. That's why I had to. Well, you know what I had to do. But he outsmarted me anyway. He taught you the most important lesson in both cooking and life: patience. The willingness to wait for ingredients to reach their peak, for flavors to develop, for the perfect moment to serve the dish. I underestimated both of you. I placed the letter in Rachel's case file, then turned to watch my kitchen through the office window. The dinner service was in full swing, Sophie expertly leading our team as they created beautiful dish after beautiful dish. The wine cellar that had once housed Isabella's illegal operation now stored a legitimate, world-class wine collection. The space rang with honest laughter and the sounds of genuine commerce. Dad would have loved this, I thought, not just the restaurant's success, but what it represented: the triumph of patience over greed, of careful planning over quick schemes, of truth over deception. That evening, as I worked the line alongside my team, a customer asked about the restaurant's name. Why Maison? Why not something more modern? I smiled, thinking of Dad, of all he taught me, of the legacy he protected. Because a house built on a solid foundation can weather any storm, I replied, plating another perfect soufflé. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about building something your enemies never thought possible, right where they tried to destroy you.